So imagine you spent 6 years skipping vacations, picking up side work on weekends, living on instant noodles, all to pay off your condo. Completely. No mortgage, no debt, yours. Then your sister shows up and tells you she and her husband are moving in. Not asking, informing, with a spreadsheet. And when that doesn't work, she shows up at 2:37 in the morning with a screwdriver. This is that story. And honestly, what this guy did next is exactly why this channel exists. Let's get into it. A week after I fully paid off my condo, my sister showed up and announced that our parents had agreed to let her family move in. She expected me to leave and find another place. I paid off my condo 8 weeks ago. 2-bedroom place in Chicago. Nothing glamorous, second-hand fridge that groaned every time it kicked on, dining table I'd assembled wrong so it wobbled if you leaned too hard on it, a closet I'd converted into a tiny office because a bigger place with a real one was never in the budget. But it was mine. And I mean that in a way that's hard to explain to people who've never had to scrape for something that long. I work in operations at a mid-sized firm downtown. Scheduling, vendor coordination, keeping the behind-the-scenes stuff running so other people don't have to think about it. Not flashy, pays steady. For years, that job was my main thing while I chipped away at the mortgage. Skipped vacations, drove the same car for 9 years, learned to fix leaky sinks off YouTube instead of calling a plumber. My friends did weekend trips while I picked up freelance data entry work on nights and Saturdays just to throw extra money at the principal. When the bank finally sent that letter, mortgage paid in full, I taped it to my fridge with a little magnet shaped like a cow. Dumb magnet. Still hanging there. That letter was the finish line I'd been crawling toward for half a decade. So when my sister Rachel showed up that Tuesday afternoon without calling ahead, I actually thought maybe she was finally coming to say congrats. She doesn't usually come alone. Most of the time, if she's in the area, she drags our parents along or her husband Mark. But this time, it was just her, standing in my doorway holding a giant iced coffee, looking around like she was scoping the place out for rent. She walked in without saying much, moved through the room slowly, peeked into the second bedroom, checked out the bathroom, even glanced into the closet office. Then she stopped in the kitchen, hands on her hips, and said the place was bigger than she remembered. I said thanks. She nodded like she'd just confirmed something in her head. Then she turned and looked at me straight on with this calm, matter-of-fact energy that should have been my first warning. So, she started, like we were already in the middle of a conversation I hadn't started. We've all agreed this place should be a family home now. I blinked at her. She said it again, slower this time. Like I just hadn't processed it right the first time. Her and Mark were moving in. I should find somewhere else. It was ridiculous for one person to hold on to 2 bedrooms when they had a baby, and rent was impossible. I laughed. Not a "you're hilarious" laugh. More of a "what on earth is happening" laugh. Rachel didn't laugh back. She crossed her arms and raised her eyebrows like I was the one being weird. I asked if she was serious. She said of course. Mom and Dad agreed. It was the best thing for everyone. It wasn't like I needed all this room. It was just me. I looked around my living room like maybe there was some secret ballroom I hadn't discovered in 5 years of living here. Then I told her, flat and clear, this wasn't a family home. I bought it. I paid for it. It's mine. She waved her hand like that was a minor detail. Said it wasn't fair for me to keep it when they needed the space more. I could get an apartment somewhere small. I didn't even use the second bedroom. I just stood there. She headed for the door like the conversation was already settled. I stopped her and told her she was not moving in here. She gave me this smile, the patient, condescending kind people flash when they think you'll come around eventually, repeated that she'd already talked to Mom and Dad, and left. I stood in the middle of my living room staring at the shut door. The fridge kicked on behind me, made that groan. I looked over at the mortgage letter still up there with the cow magnet. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. But no, Rachel was serious, and apparently so were my parents. Wait. For the listeners, this is me jumping in, not the OP. I need everyone to understand what just happened here. She didn't knock and ask. She walked in, did a full walkthrough like she was reading the listing, and then announced her family was moving in. She didn't request, she informed, iced coffee in hand. This isn't desperation. This is a property grab with a smile attached. She pulled a move so bold it could have its own TED Talk called How to Claim Someone Else's Home Using DNA as Collateral. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Princess Eminent Domain. Buckle up because this gets worse before it gets worse. I wasn't surprised my parents took her side. That part is just context. I've been working since I was 16. First job bussing tables at a greasy diner near our high school. Minimum wage plus tips if customers felt generous, and most didn't. After that, hardware store in summers, then a part-time gig at the campus library in college. By graduation, I had this reflex. Say yes to every extra hour available. I lived cheap for a long time. Studio apartment with a view of a brick wall, furniture off Craigslist, the whole thing. Rachel is 4 years younger. My parents covered her cheer camp fees, driving lessons, her prom dress. The one summer I needed new brakes on my car, they told me money was tight. She was the golden child in the classic sense. Teachers loved her, neighbors doted on her. When she forgot assignments, she was just tired. When I got a B instead of an A, they asked why I wasn't studying harder. The difference in treatment was so consistent you almost stopped noticing it. Almost. She went to some private university. Parents co-signed her loans without blinking. I was at a state school on scholarships working a warehouse shift before 6 a.m. She studied communications and posted photos at tailgate parties and spring breaks. I finished projects between shifts. She found time for coffee shop study sessions. I found time for sleep on good days. And look, I'm not sitting here saying my whole childhood was some kind of tragedy. It wasn't. We had food, a roof, parents who showed up to things. But there's a difference between parents who treat both kids the same and parents who have a favorite and just hope you don't notice. I noticed. And the funny thing about noticing is it doesn't make you bitter. It makes you independent. I stopped expecting help early and started building habits that didn't require it. When she graduated, she married Mark, who teaches middle school science. Quiet guy, always polite, never really had much to say when we were in the same room. They rented a nice 3-bedroom apartment not far from my place. Newer building, gym, rooftop deck, the whole package. Nicer than my condo by a long shot. And honestly, fine. Good for them. Then they had a baby last year. Cute kid. I sent gifts, visited when I could, tried to be a decent uncle. Then the money stuff started leaking into conversations. Little comments about daycare costing more than expected. Rent getting tight. Rachel had left her part-time admin job to stay home full-time with the baby. Mark's hours got cut at school. I figured they'd downsize. That's what people do when costs pile up. Find a 1-bedroom, cut the overhead, adjust. Instead, Rachel showed up at my door with a declaration. Actually, let me back up for 1 second. I forgot to mention this. When I first bought this condo 5 years ago, Rachel came by once. Walked through it and kind of wrinkled her nose. Said it was cozy, which is a polite way of saying small, and beneath her. I could never live somewhere like this, she told me. But good for you. I thought about that comment a lot the week after she showed up with her iced coffee and her big announcement. After her visit, I didn't feel angry right away, just off balance. Like the floor had tilted a little, and I was waiting to see if it would keep going. It kept going. Mom called the next morning. She had that voice. The one where people pretend they're just checking in, but they've already picked a side and are calling to read you the verdict. Said Rachel told her what happened, and I had to see it from their perspective. Baby, bills, impossible rent. The second bedroom was just sitting there while they struggled. Didn't that seem unfair? I told her it wasn't happening. She sighed like I'd confessed to something. Said we'd all talk at dinner Sunday. I didn't even know there was a Sunday dinner. By lunch, my dad called. Same speech, different delivery. He said things like, step up, and bigger picture. I reminded him I wasn't the one asking someone else to hand over their home. He told me not to be dramatic. That evening, an aunt I hadn't seen in over a year sent a text. Honey, they just need a break. You can find another place later. Like people kept spare condos in their back pockets. Then Rachel sent a long text that night about how this arrangement was temporary and for the good of the family. She attached a spreadsheet Mark had built. I'll give them this. It was thorough. Rent listed at 0. Utilities cut in half. No HOA fees listed anywhere. Nothing for repairs, nothing for maintenance. Like the building ran on gratitude and goodwill, and the radiators heated themselves out of the kindness of their little metal hearts. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I went to the complex's public website and read the standard lease terms. Early termination fee, 3 months rent. My eyebrows went up. This wasn't just about wanting more space. This was about avoiding a penalty. I called my friend Sam, who works front desk at a local real estate office. Asked him general questions, rental application trends lately, approval rates, that kind of thing. He said there'd been a lot of denials recently. High debt, missed payments, credit scores in rough shape. He didn't name anyone. I didn't need him to. I connected the dots on my own and didn't say anything to anyone about it. Sunday came. I drove over to my parents' house. Same one we grew up in, same peeling wallpaper in the hallway, same couch in the living room that sank in the middle because Dad absolutely refused to replace it. The garlic bread smell hit me at the door, and for a second it almost felt normal. Then I saw the setup. Rachel and Mark were already seated on one side of the table, like a panel waiting to conduct an interview. The folder was already out. My parents hovered in the kitchen, doing these little synchronized glances, like they had a script rehearsed and were waiting for their cue. Hold on. For anyone new here, this is me, not the OP cutting in. I just need everyone to clock what this dinner actually was. Because it was not a family meal. It was a tribunal with garlic bread. They staged it, folder on the table before he even sits down. Parents doing synchronized kitchen nodding like they rehearsed. Rachel with her "I'm just being reasonable" smile. Mark sitting there looking like he wandered into the wrong intervention by accident. This is a full Game of Thrones power grab, except instead of the Iron Throne, they're going after a 2-bedroom condo with a wobbly dining table and a cow magnet on the fridge. Popcorn ready. Rachel started first. Voice soft. Said they only needed the condo for a year. Maybe less, she added quickly. Depended how fast they got back on their feet. I didn't respond. She slid the folder toward me. Mark cleared his throat and said it was very organized. They'd cover utilities. No rent, obviously, since I already owned the place. Just utilities, I said, flipping through the pages. Rachel nodded like that was generous. My mom leaned in. Honey, think of the baby. She needs her own room. I looked at Rachel. You have a 3-bedroom right now. Too expensive, she said flatly. Then get a smaller place. Her mouth tightened. She asked why they should have to uproot everything when I had space sitting there unused. Because it's my home, I said. My dad sighed like he was about to deliver something from a mountain. Family working together. I had the room. They had the need. Common sense. I pointed at the folder. You wrote this like I already agreed. Did anyone think to ask me first? Silence. Rachel finally said they figured I'd be reasonable once I saw the numbers. I flipped to the budget page. No HOA fees. No repairs. Utilities cut in half. Rent at 0. I pushed the folder back across the table. Not happening. Her smile cracked. She said the 2nd bedroom was just sitting there while they were drowning. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at your lease, I said. Rachel froze. It's public. 3 months rent if you break it early. That's what this is actually about. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's face went red. She said that was none of my business. I told her she was making it my business by showing up here with a folder and her whole family as backup. Mom frowned. Is that true? Rachel glared at me. Said we just needed a fresh start. Why was I making this so hard? Because you came to my house and announced you were moving in like I had no say, I said. Like everything I worked for doesn't count because you want an easy out. Mark said they were just trying to find something that worked for everyone. For everyone or for you two? I asked. He didn't answer. Rachel looked at Mom. Tell him this makes sense. She said it desperate. Mom hesitated. Said the baby did need a room. I cut her off. Then maybe they should have planned better instead of showing up here with a fake budget and expecting me to hand over my keys. Rachel slammed her hand on the table. We're family. Family helps each other. Family also respects each other, I said. You don't get to decide my home isn't mine anymore because you made bad financial choices. Dad said to calm down. I stood up. No, You all sat here ready to guilt trip me like I'm the bad guy for not giving up the one thing I worked for. I'm not doing it. Rachel's voice shook. So you'd rather see us homeless? You rent a 3-bedroom apartment, I said. Break the lease, downsize, move somewhere cheaper. People do it every day. But you are not moving in here? That's final. Mom looked stunned. You don't mean that. I do. This isn't a debate. I grabbed my jacket, said thanks for dinner, and walked out. As I left, I heard Rachel tell Mom I was being cold-hearted. I didn't look back. Pause for a second. I want to sit with that dinner for a moment, because she built a spreadsheet to claim this man's property, drafted timelines, printed it out. She put in real effort, but pointed all of it at someone else's condo instead of just finding a 1-bedroom like a normal person. That's not desperation. That's audacity with a tab-separated document. And when he shut it down, she pulled the homeless card while living in a 3-bedroom apartment with a rooftop deck. Nobody's sleeping under a bridge here, princess. Anyway, the family pressure keeps coming after this. And then this story takes a hard left turn into actual criminal territory. After that dinner, the family chorus went full volume. Mom with family comes first. Dad with bigger picture. Cousins I hadn't talked to in months sending texts about the baby. I stopped responding to all of it. Nothing new was being said and I wasn't changing my mind. A week passed. One evening I got home from work and noticed something at the door. Fine scratches around the lock plate. A scuff low on the wood, like something had been dragged against it lightly. I ran my finger over the marks. Could have been nothing, sure. But I'd lived here 5 years. I knew every dent and squeak in this place. That wasn't there before. It was, I think, Wednesday night when I first noticed it. Maybe Thursday. Doesn't matter. Point is, it was new. My stomach felt heavy. I went inside, locked the door, and filled out the city's online non-emergency report form. Just the basics. Possible tampering, no entry, no known suspects. Hit submit, got the confirmation email, closed the laptop. Next day, I swapped in a drill-resistant deadbolt and mounted 2 cameras. One door viewer facing the hallway and a small motion-activated unit inside covering the entryway. Both recorded in HD and pushed alerts to my phone. Total cost wasn't much. Worth every single cent, as it turned out. 2 nights, nothing. I kept checking the feeds before bed anyway, volume up on my phone. 3rd night, the phone buzzed at 2:37 a.m. Motion detected at your door. I grabbed it and opened the app. Grainy black and white hallway feed. Someone standing at my door. Hoodie up, hair sticking out the sides, shoulders hunched. Something shiny in their hand, working it around the lock. Rachel. I hit record on the app and called 911. Whispered to the dispatcher that someone was trying to break into my condo, that I had live video, gave the address. Stayed on the line. She kept working the lock like she'd done it before. Like she was confident I wasn't home. The hallway lights kicked on, automatic timer, and she froze for half a second, looked over her shoulder, then went right back to jiggling the lock. Dispatcher said units were close. My heart was going way too fast. A minute later, 2 cops came into view on the hallway feed, walking fast. Rachel didn't see them until they were almost on top of her. I opened the door when they told her to step back, showed them the live feed, the tool at the lock, clear as day. They asked for her ID. She stammered something about forgetting her keys. I showed them the recording. They detained her right there in the hallway, cuffed. I wasn't smug. I wasn't even angry in that moment. I was just shaky and tired, and my brain hadn't quite caught up to what my body already knew. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes without hesitating. 5 minutes later, Mark showed up. Hair messy, sweatpants, looking like he'd sprinted over. Said it was a misunderstanding. Said she probably still thought she had a spare key from before. I told him I never gave her a spare. He ran out of explanations and just rubbed his face. Mumbled something about calling a lawyer and followed the cops out. I locked the deadbolt behind them and sat on the couch, staring at nothing for a long time. The cameras kept recording until the hallway went quiet again. Okay, time out. Your host jumping in. I want to say something about this man's approach. He didn't send threatening texts, didn't blow up the family group chat, didn't show up at their apartment yelling. He quietly installed cameras, went about his week, and waited. That's the John Wick energy people don't talk about enough. Not the part where he shoots people. The part where he says nothing, prepares everything, and lets the other side walk into the consequences they built themselves. She brought a screwdriver to his door at 2:37 in the morning and all he had to do was press record. That's not revenge. That's patience with a security system. The morning after the arrest, I took a couple hours off work. I wanted everything documented before the phone call started. First stop was the police station. Handed over the full video files. The officer said they'd pull the 911 audio from dispatch. He gave me a case number, said the footage made things pretty straightforward. When I got home, I made 2 copies of everything, one on a thumb drive, one in a locked cloud folder. Printed the incident report and filed it with my mortgage papers. Then I sent my boss a short email about a personal security situation. He wrote back that I should handle what I needed to. That was the whole exchange. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop. Mom first. How could I do this to my sister? She tried to break into my condo at 2:37 in the morning, I said. I didn't do anything. She did. Mom said I didn't have to call the police. I asked her what the better option was. Open the door and offer coffee? She said family should handle things privately. I asked her what privately meant in this specific context, because to me it sounded like pretending it didn't happen. She didn't answer that one. She just went quiet for a moment, which is its own kind of answer. Dad called 2 hours later. She has a baby. She made a mistake. Don't ruin her life over this. I told him I was asleep in my own home, and I wasn't apologizing for protecting it. He muttered something about me being cold. I hung up before I said something I definitely regret. My aunt texted that evening. Just drop the charges. I ignored it. A couple days later, a neighbor mentioned in passing that he'd heard about some old fraud case connected to somebody in the building. I looked it up out of curiosity. Court records are public if you know where to look. Rachel had a small fraud charge from 5 years back. Deferred sentence, probation, fine paid. Nothing that had messed up her life much. But it was there. I didn't tell anyone. No cousins, no group chat post, nothing. I answered the prosecutor's questions, emailed the footage when they asked for it, and kept everything boring and professional. Rachel's case moved fast. They booked her on misdemeanor charges for the break-in attempt, and the prior record made things more complicated for her at sentencing. She pled guilty to avoid a larger charge. The judge gave her 3 months and a criminal record that wasn't going away this time. Mark texted me while she was serving. Long paragraph about stress and bills and daycare costs and everything coming at them too fast at once. Said Rachel was just trying to do what parents do. I read it twice, saved it, didn't respond. Their finances hit the floor fast after that. They were still on a fixed-term lease, and when they finally broke it, the 3-month penalty arrived like a hammer. After that, they grabbed a month-to-month place at a higher rate. With Rachel not working and now carrying a record, Mark was carrying everything on a teacher's salary. 3 months later, Rachel was out. I heard through Mom they'd moved in with my parents temporarily. That's between you and them, I said. Not my business anymore. Mom didn't love that answer. She said the house was tense. Rachel and Mark arguing about money, Dad hating the noise. I stayed out of it. Yo, pause. I keep coming back to that spreadsheet. She made a whole spreadsheet to take this man's home. Listed rent as 0. Utilities cut in half. $0 budgeted for repairs, HOA fees, any of it. Put real effort into that document and pointed all of it at someone else's property instead of just finding something cheaper. If she'd used that energy on an actual housing search, none of the rest of this happens. But instead, she brought a spreadsheet to a guilt trip, a screwdriver to a deadbolt, and an existing fraud charge to a sentencing hearing. And now she's in her parents' living room. Not exactly the outcome the spreadsheet projected. A month after everything settled down, my dad stopped by with some mail that had been going to their address. He looked tired. Said Rachel was having a rough time. She made her choices, I said. He nodded slowly. Didn't defend her. Didn't lecture me. Just handed me the stack of envelopes and left. That was the last real conversation we had about any of it. I didn't reach out to Rachel. Instead, I mailed them something. I framed a photo of my front door with the new lock installed and the camera visible in the corner, and wrote a short note underneath. Hope you find a place that's yours for real. No insults, no swearing, just clear. 2 weeks later, Mom called. Said Rachel wanted to meet and clear the air. My first thought, she wants to yell at me. My second thought, she probably wants something again. I said I'd go. But here's the deal. My home is off the table. Nobody shows up uninvited. If she can't agree to that, there's no meeting. Mom agreed. Final update. Neutral ground, my parents' kitchen. Rachel was already sitting there when I arrived. Arms crossed, chin up, Mark next to her looking like he wanted to dissolve into the chair. I sat down across from them. She didn't waste time. She said I didn't have to call the cops. That family doesn't do that to each other. I told her she tried to break into my home. She said she was desperate, that I wouldn't listen, that I left them no choice. There was a choice, I said. Find another apartment. That's what people do. She said I had no idea what it was like. The bills, the baby, drowning in all of it. And there I was with all that space just going to waste. Space I worked for, I said. Space I paid for while you were calling it small and laughing at it 5 years ago. She rolled her eyes. Said that was different. No, I said, keeping my voice even. You treated this place like it was nothing until you needed it. Then you decided it was yours. Not asked, decided. She shot back that I could have just let them stay a few months. That I turned it into a whole production. That I ruined her record. You ruined your record, I said. You picked up that screwdriver. You showed up at 2:37 in the morning. That was your call, not mine. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. You think working a few extra hours makes you better than us? Makes you some kind of hero? I laughed, short and dry. No, I think it makes me the person who owns the place you tried to steal. Her face went red. Mark said quietly that it didn't have to go this far. It went as far as she pushed it, I said. I'm not carrying that for her. Rachel looked at me, jaw tight. One day you'll need help. Don't expect us to be there. I stood up. Good, I said. That way we're all clear. I hope you guys figure things out, but my home is off limits. No debates, no surprises. That's not changing. I walked out before she could fire back. Weeks went by after that. Mom tried to get everyone together for a couple more dinners. I told her the same thing each time. If my home comes up even once, I'm leaving. She said she understood. It didn't come up. I kept my routine. Work, gym, fixing small things around the condo on weekends. Fixed the sticky window in the living room that had been annoying me for 2 years. Painted the patchy wall in the hallway with cheap rollers and an embarrassing amount of blue tape. Put some plants on the windowsill that I fully expected to die. A cousin mentioned later that Rachel picked up a part-time job at a daycare center, and Mark was doing tutoring sessions after school. A few months after that, they found a small rental farther from the city. Older building, cheaper neighborhood, but theirs. I didn't reach out, not angry about it, just done. A year later, the condo looked better than it ever had. Fresh paint on every wall, not just the hallway this time. New locks on both doors. The squeaky floorboard near the bedroom, finally fixed after years of telling myself I'd get to it. I replaced the lumpy couch I'd been hauling around since college, picked up a secondhand rug that didn't clash with the curtains for once. The plants on the windowsill were somehow still alive. A couple even had new leaves coming in, which honestly surprised me every time I noticed. I talked to them sometimes when I was bored and had nothing else going on. I don't know if that does anything. Probably not. There was one Saturday afternoon where I just sat at my desk with a cold coffee going warm beside me, doing absolutely nothing for like an hour. Not watching anything, not on my phone, just sitting in the quiet. And I remember thinking this was the most expensive hour I'd ever had. Not because anything was costing money, but because it took 6 years of double shifts and skipped vacations and instant noodles to buy that 1 hour of just sitting there without a single thing to worry about. Felt worth it. Coming home felt different after all of it. Not just because the place looked better, because it was mine in a way it hadn't been before the whole mess started. I'd hit the deadbolt after work and feel it in my shoulders. That weight just gone. No guilt trips, no phone calls telling me I was selfish, no one showing up uninvited with a folder or a screwdriver. The quiet wasn't lonely, it was steady. For the first time in a long time, I could sit on the couch with the TV off and not be waiting for the next fight. That's what I'd been working toward the whole time. I just didn't know that's what it was called until I finally had it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done at that dinner table? Would you have pressed charges or let it go? Look, he's not perfect. Early on, he let his family guilt him for years without drawing a hard line. But the second someone brought a spreadsheet to take his home, and then a screwdriver to follow through, he didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't fold. He documented everything, called 911, pressed charges, and kept his mouth shut through all the noise after. The family spent months calling him selfish. But there's nothing selfish about holding on to something you bled for. That's just not bending. Drop your take in the comments. What would you have done at that dinner table? And if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. Next one's already loaded.